Many have stayed with me since the beginning, including one of my very first customers and party hosts, who still chooses me as her consultant over 10 years later. It's important for me to make sure my clients never feel pressured or annoyed by me reaching out. I want them to be informed and always getting the most value for their money. Before we get into this, let's do a little experiment, and I'm gonna need your participation, please. Don't leave me hanging. So raise your hand if you've ever felt icky, awkward, or downright nervous about follow-up. You don't have to actually have done it, but even if you just had the thought and that little voice in your head saying, should I do this? Put those hands up nice and high so everyone can see. Okay, now keep your hand in the air if you pushed through that fear and followed up anyways, okay? Now take a look around. These brave souls face their fears and live to tell the tale. Can you believe it? So it must not be that bad, right? But don't lower those hands yet. Put them right back up. I've got one more question. Keep your hand up if you've ever received truly horrible feedback from a customer. I'm not talking about getting ghosted or a simple no. I mean the worst case scenario. Someone who was so unbelievably rude and so unreasonably mean that it made you rethink all of your life choices. Every single one. Okay, we'll never message those people again, they're really mean. But notice how very few hands are still up, right? So the fear that we build up in our heads is almost always way worse than the reality of doing it. Customers appreciate thoughtful, genuine follow-up. So let's get into it. When I started to follow up, one of my fears was that people would think differently of me when I reached out to them. I thought they'd be annoyed or think I was being pushy, but I decided that other people's perception of me does not pay my bills, right? If they didn't like it, that was their decision, but this was how I was going to run my business. My intent was to make sure that my customers felt like they were taken care of and they weren't just another sale. I wanted to be sure that they were satisfied with their products and they remembered my name when they thought of Scentsy. It was scary, but I stood firm and committed to consistent follow-up. I asked my customers for feedback on my messages, and I wanted to share their responses with you because I think it's really important to look at things from the perspective of a customer. Let's start with Angela's response in the middle. She's a fellow direct sales consultant who has been with her company for quite some time. She touches on the difference between the right and wrong way to follow up, and she's got a great point. Like I mentioned before, it's important to have the right intentions when you're messaging your customers. It's not about you and getting more sales. It's about them and their satisfaction with the product and your services. I also want to focus on something else she said. I don't want to seem like once I forget a customer, I don't want to seem like I forget a customer once I make the sale. So let's step into the customer's shoes for a moment. Imagine you've just spent $50 with a direct sales consultant. After your initial conversation, you don't hear from them again. Your order arrives, but there's no follow-up, there's no check-in, and no thank you message. A month passes, and while you've been enjoying the product, you haven't heard from the consultant in nearly 2 months. Now, you've used it up and want to reorder, but there's a problem. You can't remember their name or where you found them. Instead of going through the hassle of tracking them down, you just pick up a similar product from the store, even though it really wasn't your favorite. It's frustrating, right? It leaves a bad impression and it makes you less likely to buy from them or that company ever again. Check out what some of my other customers are saying as well. It makes me feel like I'm not just a number to you. It's a nice reminder to slow down and be appreciative that someone cares. It shows dedication and that you don't forget about people who don't order often. It's natural to have fear or anxiety about following up. We're often messaging multiple people at once, which can make us overthink and feel anxious. But our customers are only receiving one message. They aren't obsessing over it the way we do. So what feels like a huge deal to us is literally just a simple notification to them. Sarah admits that she doesn't always respond, and I think we should dive a little bit deeper into this one. I know how awkward it can be when your customer reads a message but doesn't answer. But let's go back into that customer perspective again. Life is busy. Kids, pets, spouses, extracurriculars, work, school, like it's never ending, right? So the last thing on their minds is Scentsy. Many customers will tell me that they meant to respond sooner, but got distracted with cooking dinner or helping the kids. And I'm often told that they opened the message, but life got hectic and they forgot to respond. It happens. And guess what? When I text them again to check in, maybe a couple of days later, or sometimes even weeks or months later, they're always happy I reached out and appreciative because they didn't mean to ghost me. So don't leave your customers out of the loop based on your assumptions and anxieties. Amanda mentions that she knows that I'm reaching out to her for work, but it's nice to have a reason to connect with people, and it's so true. In today's busy society, we forget how important personal connections are. I always try to ask about their life, but I'm super forgetful, so I don't always remember the details to ask about. But thankfully, we can just pop onto social media on their profile or scroll back through past messages and remind ourselves before starting a conversation. It's the little things like this that customers appreciate and tell their friends about. In a world where customer service is severely lacking, be the change. Provide the level of customer service that you expect from the businesses that you frequent. Think about your definition of a great experience and what you would want if you were the customer. Then, provide that. These little things will set your business apart and will encourage your customers to come back to you time and time again. Everyone's follow-up system is going to be unique and tailored to themselves, but the biggest piece of advice that I can offer is to keep it simple and be honest with yourself. Make sure that the system you choose works with your lifestyle and that you'll actually stick to it. For example, if you're someone who spends a lot of time on your phone and finds it easier to access digital reminders, you might prefer a digital follow-up system like Sensi Connect. If you prefer the pen and paper systems, then you might be better off getting a calendar or a journal from the dollar store, or using the daily tracking we just learned about, and using that to keep track of your efforts. This is not the time to completely reinvent the wheel. Just pick something simple and easy that fits in your lifestyle and get it started. If you're unsure where to start, talk to your upline, your fellow consultants, about what works for them. Events like today are the perfect opportunity to reach out to each other and learn. There are also lots of resources on YouTube and the Workstation Training tab. So let's talk timing next. I suggest taking photos of these next few slides, but I'll also post them to the World Tour group on Facebook. I personally thank each customer at the time of the order. I touch base a week after delivery, and I check in about 3 weeks later, and then a final ask about refills about 6 weeks later. I'm going to show you some generic options for these messages, but I encourage you to personalize them. Ask about their families, get to know your customers, and use these follow-ups as a chance to create a relationship with them. Remember that these messages are about them and their experience. This cadence will keep you and your business in your customer's mind over a 10-week period. Chances are your customer will need more Sensi over that time period, or they'll see something else that they'll want, and with you following up, your name will pop into their head when they're ready. Don't forget to ask about details like the scents they purchased, the samples you sent, etc. Make it feel like a personalized message to them and not one to a group, not a generic one to a group. So what are we saying? Here's a good example of a thank you message. This is something I would send to a website order, but it can be customized to club, bulk orders, whatever you need. The invitation to your group is key to help grow your social media following. This can be changed to follow me on TikTok, Insta, or whatever it is that you use to connect to your customers. Now the order has been delivered for about a week or so, and I want to reach out and make sure that they received their package, and hopefully they've opened it up and given it a sniff. Let's be honest, sometimes we order things and they sit in their box in the corner until we decide we have time to open them up. And sometimes we don't have that time or motivation for weeks. So I'd like to ask if they've had a chance to try out their products, or if the bulb for their warmer survived shipping. This nudges them to open their box and actually start using the products if they haven't already. 3 weeks later, it's time to check in again. I like to ask how their week has been, or follow up on something that we've mentioned in our last conversation. You're trying to spark a conversation. Club is a great way to add consistent PRV to your business, and so I like to mention it wherever I can. The more we talk about it, the more people will be interested in it, and then we'll have questions. So I include a club prompt in this message because naturally they're going to want to know what those perks are. 6 weeks later, it's been 10 weeks since the initial purchase. Chances are your customer needs a refill on something. This is also a good time to check back in, especially if you haven't spoken to them for the last 6 weeks. Just remind them that they're still on your mind. It's always nice to include some sort of promotion as well. So this month I would mention the 10% off in the discontinuing list. And I'd also let them know that car bars are leaving permanently. Adding your website link helps as well, because even if they don't respond, your last communication with them gives them all the information they need if they decide they want to browse on their own time or come back to this message later on down the road. It's also important to inform your customers regularly, but especially during the transition months. Run those reports on your workstation and get in touch with customers who have ordered scents on the discontinuing list. There's nothing worse than the message that will inevitably come on March 1st. Hey, can I get a 6-pack of Christmas cottage? Send those emails and texts. Do not rely on social media posts alone to spread the word. I promise you that reaching out to your customers and following up individually will give you the results that you're looking for. I do find that it takes a couple days for responses and results to start coming in after following up though. So don't leave it to the last minute. Oh my gosh, we're almost done. That was way quicker than normal. Okay, so now it's time for my challenge to you. So I want you guys to go into your workstation and run your discontinuing products report. Message 5 or 10 people a day from this report, letting them know that the products that they've ordered before are leaving. While 5 to 10 messages a day may seem like a lot, it will actually take very little time to actually do, okay? Don't overthink it, just do it. Do this until you've exhausted the list or it's the end of the month. I bet that you'll get positive results and you'll realize that you haven't connected with some customers since their last order with you. Well, thank you for investing in yourself and your business by being here at World Tour. A huge shout out to head office and all the incredible presenters for making today happen. I truly hope you were able to take something valuable away from this presentation and something that will help make your follow-up efforts in 2025 smoother, more confident, and even more successful. And remember, you are capable of amazing things. The only person standing between you and your goals is you. So go out there, take action, make it happen. Thank you.